Right now there's a lot of excitement out there about new cameras. Canon's R5 and R6 just being launched. I've seen something about a new Sony, maybe an A7S model that's due out at some point in the not too distant future. And I've even seen some rumours that Nikon are replacing their Z6 and Z7 full frame mirrorless cameras probably by the end of the year. I don't know if they're replacements or extending the range, but I've seen something about it. And it's made me wonder, is it time for me to replace my camera with something a bit newer? And the answer is no. Because before I invest a load of money in a new camera, there's two important questions that I like to ask. And I thought I'd share them with you in this video because if you're wondering about investing in a new camera, maybe you want to answer these two questions as well. Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. So as I said in the intro, lots of announcements about new cameras coming out. Canon's releasing the R5 and the R6 full frame mirrorless cameras, which have been waited for a while I think. Nikon have also announced that by the end of the year they're hoping to have replacements for their full frame mirrorless Z6 and Z7 out. And lots of people are talking about buying these new cameras as soon as they're available. Now, I can say quite categorically, I have no intention of buying any of the new releases at this point, unless something major happens. And I thought what I would do is just talk a bit about why that is, a little bit about my current camera, and the questions that I pose to myself before I dig deep into the bank balance to spend a load of money on a new camera. And I think they're good questions to ask before you even consider splashing out a load of cash on the latest and greatest new camera. Now, if you're new to the channel, my normal videos are me out in the field doing landscape photography. If you like that kind of thing, then check out my other work, and if you like it, don't forget to hit subscribe. So this is my camera. It's the Nikon D810. I've had it about 2.5 years. But it's a 6-year-old design. It was released in 2014, and for several years it was, without a doubt, one of the best landscape photography cameras out there. Tech specs, well, 36 megapixels, full frame, has a base ISO of 64, which is pretty nice. It has no anti-aliasing filter, so it tends to be a little bit sharper. It's got great dynamic range, and as I said, one of the best landscape photography cameras out there when it was released. Now, as I said, I bought it 2.5 years ago, so when I bought it, it had already been replaced. It would have been replaced by the Nikon D850, which had more megapixels and some other features. But this doesn't go from being one of the best cameras to being a camera that's no good just because there's a replacement which is slightly better. It still remains a very good camera. And it still remains a very good camera to this day, and you can pick these up really cheap on the second-hand market. Again, something else we'll come on to. Although the D850 is, I think, still in production, most people now would probably buy the mirrorless Z7, which is definitely a more advanced camera, without a doubt. So it would seem logical perhaps that I might want to go out and buy a Z7 to replace this, more up to date. But there is a question to be asked. And the question is, if I spend a load of money on the Z7, how is that going to improve my photography? Because if it's not going to improve my photography, then what's the point in spending the money? Okay, first thing is, this is a pretty heavy beast, and the Z7 is lighter than this by a considerable amount, but the chances are I'm still going to be using it with some pretty big and hefty lenses, unless I'm going to replace all my lenses as well. And even then, I think the lenses for the Z7, the dedicated Z-mount lenses, are still pretty heavy. So how much weight am I really going to save? If I could save a lot of weight, yeah, that'd be great, because it might mean I can get to places that might be a bit of a struggle now, or certainly get there with less effort. But looking at the specs, I don't think I'd save a massive amount of weight, certainly not just by changing the body to the Z7. If I went for some of the newer lenses, maybe, but it's not going to be that substantial. So weight is not enough for me to say this is going to improve my landscape photography over what the D810 can do, or what I can do with the D810. The Z7 does have more megapixels. I think it's 42 or 45. Can't remember off the top of my head, but I'll stick a note down here what it is. 36 to 45 is a big jump, and yeah, I'm not going to argue. I wouldn't mind having 45 megapixels to play with sometimes. Now, let's be honest, 36 megapixels is plenty. You can make a huge print from a 36 megapixel image. The only time perhaps when more megapixels would sometimes be something that I crave is when I'm shooting and I can't zoom in, as much. I haven't got enough focal length to really get the subject I want framed properly, and I want to crop, and I want to crop quite a lot. But most of the time that's not an issue. So more megapixels at the moment, not enough to convince me to spend a load of money. And then a lot of these new cameras have features that sound great, but they don't really interest me that much. 8K video. I still shoot my videos in 1080p HD. I don't think we're at the stage yet where 8K is particularly necessary for YouTube in particular. I think the majority of videos on YouTube are still full HD. Advanced autofocus with eye detection and animal eye detection. Well, 95% of the time I manually focus anyway. If I was a portrait photographer or a street photographer or a wildlife photographer, yeah, absolutely. But for landscapes, I don't think it's going to make a big difference to what I do. Image stabilization. They're talking about some fantastic image stabilization capabilities, both in body and in lens. That means you can shoot handheld at quite slow exposure times. But most of the time I shoot on a tripod. And although I guess maybe having that improved image stabilization means I could shoot off the tripod a bit more, leave the tripod at home sometimes. Actually, I quite like using the tripod. It's part of the appeal of the process to me, is the setting up and getting everything dialed in the way I want it, and just then getting everything right and waiting for the light. It's part of the appeal of what I do, rather than sort of rushing and taking a shot and moving on. So those kind of features are not going to make a big difference to my photography, so no incentive for me there to spend the money. So is there nothing in these new cameras that would help me in my photography, either to improve or just to make life easier? Well, yeah, there is. If there's one thing that I do wish I had, it's something better around this screen. And there are 2, possibly 3 things that would be quite nice, that you can't do with this, that you can do with some of the more modern cameras. So for example, you can't do an aspect ratio preview on this. You can't set it so that it shows you a 16:9 or a 1:1 or an 8:10, which I know a lot of the more advanced, all the later cameras, you can do that. But to be honest, I'm pretty good at visualizing a crop on the screen now, because I've been doing it a while, so it's not going to make a big difference. What would be nice is the touchscreen capability, where you can select focus points, because if I can tap the screen to select my focus point, when I then zoom into 100% to manually focus, it's a lot easier than using the little toggle here to move the focus point around, in particular if I'm focus stacking, where I want to focus way off in the background, and then I've got to toggle all the way down into the foreground, whereas with the touchscreen you could tap on the background, manually focus, take a shot, tap on the foreground, zoom in, manually focus, take a shot. It would be a convenience, and it would be nice, I'll admit, but not enough to spend a load of money on. And probably the most useful thing that I could have would be a tilt, and in particular a flip screen. Mostly for when you want to shoot in awkward places, you know, if you want to shoot with the camera, you know, really low down to the ground in particular, because the only way I can do that is pretty much to lay on the floor. And with the landscapes that we got around here, that's not always a comfortable thing to do, trust me. No nice soft grass around here. It's either rocks or prickly plants. So a tilt screen, or particularly a flip screen, which incidentally I don't believe the Z7 has. I think the Z7 still has just the tilt screen, doesn't have one that you can fully flip. That would be nice to make the process of composition in certain circumstances easier. Is it enough for me to spend a load of money? No. So I asked myself the question, how would spending a load of money on a new camera help or improve my landscape photography? And that's all I can really come up with. Realistically, a flip screen is probably about the only thing, and that's not worth the money that I'm going to spend on it. If you've answered that question, that yes, you do need a new camera because it will help you to improve your photography, then ask yourself, do I need the latest camera to do that? Or is buying a model that's just been replaced just as good? So I bought this camera 2.5 years ago after it had already been replaced by the Nikon D850. Why? Because I got it cheap. Because everybody wanted to buy the D850. Nobody wanted to buy the D810 because it had been replaced. And if you're prepared to buy used, there's no better time to buy a used camera than when it's just been replaced by a new model. Because when the D850 came out, the used market was full of these things, because there were lots of people who'd got the D810, the D850 came out, more megapixels, few additional features, flip screen, got to have one, went out, bought one and then sold their D810. And a lot of those D810s had barely been used. They were like brand new. That's just my thoughts on the subject. You may completely disagree with me. Maybe you're thinking of rushing out and buying one of the new cameras even as we speak. If so, let me know in the comments. Or if you agree with me, let me know in the comments. Either way is fine. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like, share it on social media. Don't forget about that comment. And if you like landscape photography and you'd like to see more of my videos, don't forget to hit subscribe and just tap that little notification bell as well. You get a notification every time I put a new video out, which is twice a week. I'll stop rambling and just say thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And until the next video, which hopefully will be out in the field again. Bye.